So this week we will be finishing out the last of the content for the class. And what we're going to be doing is talking mostly about the cover sheet information. So let's talk about that a little bit. Some of this information that we're going to be talking about today breaks from the process that we've been involved with, but still adheres to some of the rules. So let's review a couple things from way back in week 1. We said that drawings are organized by scale, small scale to large scale, and I think last week you saw the largest scale information, and that was in those details. We also look at macro information, meaning really broad-based information, and then very detailed information. So macro to micro information is organized in that way. And then general information to specific information. So tonight we're talking about general information. And what you may not understand is that some of this information isn't widely available to you as you start your drawings, as you start creating the drawing construction document information. But it does trickle in, and some of it arrives relatively late in the process. And so your drawings may be largely complete as you start to work on the cover sheet information. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, but don't be it's not really like a book in that you create chapters and then build the chapters. Actually, you're building the information and then kind of in reverse order filling in the information as it becomes available on that cover sheet. So let's talk about that. These sheets typically start out with a very general information. So oftentimes this is what we call standardized or boilerplate information. That term means that it is pretty consistent from one project to another. So that standard information or that standardized information is really very, very similar between one project and another. And what we find is that because it is so similar, we can use a very standardized format. We can organize this information that will be consistent for every project we do, and just some of the information changes, but the largest quantity of information stays pretty consistent and repeatable from one project to another. And hopefully you'll see how this works. The other aspect to understand about this information is that it is the general information for the project, and it will serve to organize and provide kind of a consistent platform of information moving forward. So it does become important that the information be correct and be consistent. So what are we really trying to accomplish here? Well, we're trying to provide that project information that is important for the contractor, is important for the building department, and serves to provide enough information about the drawings and the content within your construction drawings to allow people to understand the way they're going to be organized and the way you're going to present them. And so as a result, it's important to understand that this information is the first information people see about your project. And so it's important that it be consistent and be understandable and be correct. So because it initiates the project, it starts with that project descriptions and some very, it sets the groundwork for which the project is going to be developed. Since it is the first project information, it is important that we be clear and organized in how we provide that information. And what you're going to find in the assignment tonight and in the example that I give you is a really generic form of this information. Will it be the same for every place you work? No, but it will be consistently similar. And so you'll find that if you go to company X or Y or Z, that you're going to find the general content to be very similar. And so you should start understanding that it gives the designer an opportunity to really provide a competent and confident standing on the information. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because, um, believe it or not, the very first thing the contractor is going to look at is that cover sheet. And because it's on the cover, the same is going to be true for all the subcontractors, and it's going to be also true for the building official and the inspectors. So the more fragmented, more inconsistent, misorganized information is going to flag to them that you really don't know what you're doing putting this information together. So as someone who's done this for many years, we like that standardization. We like that consistency between project A, project B, and all that, because we know that the information is always provided at that location in the drawings. So this gives us very simple and direct and general information about what we expect out of the project. It describes some general construction information, and it helps to describe how this set of documents is going to be organized and how it's going to be presented in this set of documents. So here's what a general cover sheet might look like. And this is what you're going to be working on today. So the things that we like to be clear on is that as you look at a set of drawings, they read like a book. And so they're always going to be stapled or bound or fastened together along the left side of the drawings. So what that means is that the book, as a book, the sheets are just going to kind of roll as you would in looking at a book. They're just going to kind of read from left to right. You're going to open the sheet from the right and peel it back to the left. So what that means, though, is that the sheet is also going to be rolled up into a set of drawings from the left side. And as they roll them all the way down this way, then the thing that is exposed on the roll of drawings is the title block. So the title block information is important. We're not going to worry about it so much today because that has a lot to do with the particular company that you're working for. And so what you'll find is that there's information very necessary for the project's identity listed in the title block. That's why we put it on the right and not on the left, because as we roll the drawings up and we put a rubber band around them, we can look at that set of drawings and know that by the way they're rolled, that's where that information is. Coincidentally, other information is then organized on the right side of the drawings, just a little further in. So what we're going to see is we're going to see a sheet index that lists all the drawings or all the documents that are provided. Then we're going to find some building department information or building data information that is important for the building official or the plan checker to look at. So we don't want them wandering around looking for it. We want it right there, really simple to find. Similarly, we want to find the contact information for the project participants. Those would be the building owner, the project manager, maybe the tenant, the architect, the engineers. All their names are put right there so they're not wandering around a sheet looking for them. They're right at the right side of the drawings. And then the last element that's often put along the right side of the drawings is a vicinity map. That's a way that the inspector and others can find their way to the site pretty easily. Now, is it a detailed diagram? No, but it's enough that, especially with, smartphones and all the other stuff, that they can pretty much find where they need to be. So from that, then we find some very general symbols. These, I think you'll find or remember, happened in each of our sheets. Now, when we looked at those, we found that if Archetype found that it was easier to replicate this information here and these symbols as applicable on each of the sheets so that the contractor isn't going back and forth between the plans, that he always has them available. And so what ends up happening is that we provide that information as general symbol information on the cover sheet, and that gives them that general sense of what the different symbols mean. We also then provide some very particular or specific noting that might be applicable to either fire sprinklers or security, or there's some other information that might be included as a design intent statement or a project description. That kind of goes in here. And then the rest of the body of information is really relegated to general notations, general noting, which is really the platform of what we expect the contractor to be referring to as text information about the project. Now, if you look back at your plan sheets, your 1/8" plan sheets, you're going to find some open spaces left on those drawings. And that's where we would come through and add in a set of redundant notes that occur on the cover sheet that are applicable to the construction drawings. We would then copy and paste them into the documents where they occur. And so again, the contractor note, he can't say, I didn't know that note had anything to do with what I was doing. We said, well, we provided it as general notes, so we were hoping you'd see it there, but we also copy them again on the specific construction sheet or reflected ceiling plan sheet or electrical sheet or the finishes sheet as applicable, so they can't say, we didn't know that was important to you. So we're going to be a little bit redundant with our symbols and our notations to try to pick up things that the contractor may miss or may conveniently omit. And so we can come back and say, no, that information was provided clearly and accurately to you. So that is generally what's there. Of course, we do like a nice big title on the sheet so that anyone looking at it doesn't have to squint their eyes on what drawings are we looking at. They know this is the project. They can see it laid out and they know what it's about. So that's kind of a little bit of a tour of this sheet. And again, it may differ slightly from one company to another, but the general inventory of parts is still pretty much covered on that cover sheet. Okay, so going in a little bit more detail, we do like that the title information to be easy to find. The other side of it is it's a little bit of an ego stroke to the client. I mean, sometimes when we have a big project, we will put the cover sheet behind, or the cover sheet information as a C2 sheet or an A2 sheet behind a rendering that we'll do on the cover. Because when the client looks at their drawings, they see their shiny new building with their rendering and their name on it. It's a bit of an ego stroke for them. And so if you're going to do something kind of monumental that way, that's where you would put it. And then it then serves, believe it or not, to protect the cover sheet information from damage that might occur on the job site. So anyway, job title's good, job location, vicinity map with the address. That, as I mentioned, is key information that we want to have on that sheet as well. As I mentioned, project participants and consultants are listed. As you can see, there's a listing of people and entities that are important to the project's development. So in the event that a question arises, either by the construction entity or by the owner, they can contact all the different parties, and so they're listed there for that information. Other information that is really important to the building department is this project data information. So they want to know, what the name, the location, they want to know the square footage, they want to know the occupancy by code, they want to know the construction type by code, they want to know how big it is in terms of floors, what jurisdiction in terms of city it sits in. Of course, if they're the building department, hopefully they know that it's in their city. And then the code version that's being provided. Now, as you can see here, this slide is old because it's listing a 2010 version. We're already up to 2019. And so that version of the code you'll want to update as we do this, as you go through the information. Okay, so we have those notes that are available for the contractor to understand. We've provided some very general noting here. And the thing that you want to bear in mind here a bit is that it's not about plopping the drawings or plopping the notes on the sheet and saying, I'm done. Really, you're going to have to read those notes. And you're going to have to understand what they mean. Because we didn't meet in person, I didn't get to show you my show and tell drawings that have significant red marks all over them. This is I usually show what a set of drawings look like that are getting red checked by the senior designer before they go out to construction. And usually this is done during the time when they're in plan check. So they might be in plan check for 2, 3, 4 weeks. That gives the designer of record or the entity whose name is on the drawings, the responsible party, an opportunity to read every single note. And that's what I do, every single note, every single dimension, every single thing. And that has served me well in that it has kept me out of lawsuits. It's kept me out of difficulties with the client who said, why do the drawings say one thing here and another thing over there? So it is important to understand that the drawings, even at the cover sheet, even as a standardized and repeatable document, has to be looked at from one corner to the other in a very complete way. And so elements of building codes, fire codes, all these different code applications become important. And also the contractor notes, what I expect the contractor to be doing. Remember, he's the construction expert. He is the construction professional. We are the design professionals. Our job is to tell them what we expect the project to be upon completion. And if that includes confirmation that the contractor has provided all these compliance elements that have to do with code, that may be required. And sometimes the building department comes in and says, hey, I need a note that ensures that the contractor is going to provide a compliant construction through ICC or through a whole variety of different code provisions. So we sometimes have to come in and supplement our general notes with some notations that the building department wants to see to make sure that the contractor constructs the project in compliance with the building codes. So in these notes, we often include a breakdown of notes that have to do with demolition, construction, all these other elements that you've already drawn. The thing that was missing in your drawings was a lot of notations. Well, generally speaking, we grab the notations off the cover sheets that are applicable, and we put them on the appropriate sheet. Like demo notes would go on the demo sheet, construction notes would go on the construction sheet, etc. So as a result, there's a duplication, as I mentioned previously, but it also gives us a chance to maybe tweak the note just a little bit more and add some more content that might take it from general to much more specific information as required by each of those plan drawings. So again, there are specialty notes that we have an opportunity to draw. Now, I'm going to share with you that the sheet format that you've been working on is about a 24 by 36. I think it's a C size sheet, something like that. Maybe it's a D size. But the point I guess I'm getting at is that the sheet size that Archetype uses is a 30 by 42. So the amount of real estate that exists on our sheets are probably 50% larger than what you're drawing with. And that's simply because the class is intended to provide an introduction to this information. But as you swim in a bigger pond, more notes and more drawings and more space is required to do that. So we may have on that cover sheet much more area to accommodate specialty building department notes, landlord required notes, sprinkler notes, all these different notes. And we sometimes on really large projects will have a second cover sheet. It'll be a C2 sheet or an A2 sheet that just covers additional notations and requirements as required for the project or by the building official. Okay, so as we move back over to some of that important information on the right, we want to remember that we have to give kind of like an index that would occur at the front of a book. We want to let folks know what kind of drawings, what is the full complement of information that they should expect in this set of drawings. So we will list the architectural or the design, and some designers will use an ID number instead of an A number. That's perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong with that. But we also provide those consultant drawings that might include structural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, in some cases, civil engineering drawings if we're doing some things outside that have to do with accessibility. So as a result, we're going to end up with a lot of sheets. So back to my earlier comment, we may not know how many sheets we have until we get to the very end. So this part of the drawing gets filled in towards the end because we now have an opportunity to take an accounting and an inventory of all the information we're providing and list them effectively in the sheet index. So with that, we're going to list a number and we're going to list a name. And so that the construction folks can look at, they know what sheet A1 is or A6 is, and they can by only number and by description. So, and don't forget there will be, consultant information that adds a fair number of sheets to this listing. Now, as I mentioned, in some projects, we have a more complete listing of symbols. And sometimes on large projects, we will include this as a C sheet, like a C3 sheet, if there's a lot of information that's graphically being represented. Again, in the set that you've been working on, we've kept it kind of simple just because we don't want to overwhelm you, but don't be surprised when you go out in the big world and find that there's a lot of different symbols out there. And sometimes folks use them very specifically on their own symbols sheet. So these may represent standardized abbreviations also, so that words like typical, instead of being spelled out each time, might simply say TYP period for typical. And those abbreviations would be listed also in amongst those general symbols and all that. So this is, again, just simple general information, may not vary significantly as cover sheet information between one project and another, but scale may have a difference. You know, a large project may just require more information. So be prepared for that. All right, so some specialty information that might be appropriate to include in this information might include, you know, some discussion about means and methods and who's responsible for them. Maybe information about what restrictions there are on project hours and project areas of work, as well as how to protect the project from damage due to construction. Sorry, I had to take a drink. Okay, so as a result, the information that occurs on some of these sheets is important to not bury in some obscure corner on the back sheets, but bring them right up to the front and flag them. Sometimes we'll draw an extra box around them and put bold letters on them to catch the contractor's attention so that they know these are important elements. And how do they affect things? They may not affect your design, but they affect how the construction is going to be performed. And if they're not correctly articulated, the contractor could come back and say, you didn't tell me that there were restricted hours of work, or there was restricted areas where I could do laydown work and put my materials on site. If you don't call that out, that becomes a change order. And that becomes an extra cost to your client. So as a result, we want to be thoughtful and ask our clients, you know, what are some of the important elements that are going here, you know, going to be enforced as part of the construction requirements. And so this is just a way of accommodating that. Of course, you know, specialty code versions and elements may come to bear. We have found that one of the ways of not having to list all the accessibility and all the fire and building department notes is to provide a specific note sheet that deals with very specific requirements of code. Now, I have, as our client, we have some federal clients. One of the clients I think I mentioned in previous lectures is the National Archives. In fact, I had a conference call with them today, and they have their own standards. So not only are we complying with the building department, we're meeting federal requirements as issued by the National Archives about specialty construction that protects their collections and their facilities. And so sometimes we will include additional requirements in the form of performance specifications and or specialty sheet drawings that help the contractor know what are required conditions of construction that are applicable to their work in specialty facilities like presidential libraries or archive facilities throughout the United States. Okay, so other specialty considerations might include some notations about what protects your design process. So one of the things that we like to suggest is a 1 or 2 or 3 sentence statement about your design intent. And it talks about the design goals include providing open office facilities with specialty assembly areas and meeting spaces, blah, 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 blah. So it puts into text what your design drawings have kind of shown is an illustration without getting too lengthy in words, because here's the point. When the contractor goes, all I could do is look at what you had and try to guess your minds. No, I put the design intent in words on the cover sheet. I told you what our goals were. So if you have any question, you're always obligated and obliged to contact me if there's a conflict or some sort of question in your mind. Additionally, it gives us an opportunity to start setting up some goals and requirements for how design information is to be handled. For example, I think I may have mentioned it in a previous lecture that sometimes the process of design includes verification. That means that you put down a requirement, a specification for the contractor to provide a certain product for flooring. And what will happen is that in your design information, in your administrative requirements, you're going to ask the contractor to submit samples of the approved material to you for your review and acceptance. I didn't say approval, I just said for your review and acceptance. And the reason I say that process needs to occur is that, one, it means that he's engaging your product representatives in a timely fashion, and so that the product doesn't go out of production over a period of time. And this permits you some safeguards to know that the selections that you've made with your client are safeguarded, and that process occurs early in the process of construction and administration, not late in the process. That way you safeguard your design selections. Additionally, it gives an opportunity for the contractor to understand that that availability may not always be there, and that if there are costs associated with reselecting product, that he bears responsibility for that. That means that if he waits and the product becomes unavailable, then he's responsible for paying your hourly fees to reselect materials. They hate that. So understand this, that there's a lot of different tools that you have, and unless you spell them out some way or another, they're not going to know them, and they're not going to be accountable for them. So I want you to kind of understand that this is a way of protecting your design position in these notes and on these early standardized sheets. Okay, so how do we do this stuff? It shouldn't be any sort of surprise to you that really we start early in the process. We start with the program, we start with the schematics to make sure that we understand all the project requirements going into the production process. That includes what may happen at an 1/8 inch, what happens at a 1/4 inch, what happens at the cabinetry, what happens with the wall types, and we try to get those into that standardized formula that we call the cover sheet. Now, does it always work? No, but we're pretty close. We get them probably 95% of the time. And if we don't have it, like I mentioned, we add a sheet because we can, and it gives us an opportunity to be even more clear, more concise, and more organized with our information. So we're going to look at the format. We're going to make sure that the content is very standard to our purpose, and hopefully we don't have to make a lot of changes to it right off. The things we know we're going to change are all this information in here. That is unique to each project, as is the title and the title block. So we're going to pay attention to the building data, the sheet index, the participants, and the vicinity map, just as I've talked about earlier in this lecture. We're going to pay attention to the notations and the specialty notes that are relevant, and we're going to check them for correctness. And one of the things you're going to notice is that in the information I give you tonight, the dates on the building codes are old. You're going to have to update those. So don't just copy them onto the drawings and, in a copy paste without making correction, because if you show somebody this and they see the old notes and they see the old things, they're going to think poorly of you because you didn't read the information on them. So make sure you update the information, please. So consider, the project, descriptions. Remember that there may be some challenges that you're up against, something problematic, whether it be a specialty finish, whether it be a specialty compliance requirement, and make sure that you get that notations, those notations provided on the cover. Migrate a copy of them onto those specific drawings so that you can emphasize or re-emphasize to the contractor what's important. We want to make sure that those specialty notes and requirements are easy to find and not hidden. That's where a lot of contractors pull out their hair and they get very grumpy if you don't make it simple to find the information. So please remember where you're putting this information and be thoughtful about it. Then think about, identifying what issues are likely to be challenging and how you anticipate the contractor is going to solve them. Not without telling them how to do the work, but what will be satisfactory to you. So identifying this, we want to be thoughtful of the process, not necessarily the method for doing the work, but the process for confirming they've got the right paint, confirming they got the right finishes, making sure that the product has been ordered in time, and all that information. Now, unfortunately, this course doesn't really talk about construction as much as it should, but the process of construction includes a highly choreographed process of submittals, reviews, and issuances of information to the construction company on a whole variety of things. And maybe we'll have another opportunity in some future class to look at those again. But in these construction documents, our goals are to try to keep it simple at this stage. So specific activities, submittals, clearances, those are important. Time schedules, sequencing, all that information is not how the project gets built in terms of how assemblies work, but what you expect administratively will happen so that you can ensure that your design work gets done correctly. So as we kind of start to wrap up this information, your part in this is to coordinate these requirements and identify where specialty requirements are required and where coordination of responsibility. Whose job is that? And because the contractor is the construction expert, we're going to put those responsibilities on him, and we're going to say it. You are responsible for this, and we will assist with review. We will assist with clarifications, but you're responsible for the work. So the management responsibilities also remain with the contractor. We have managed the design process. We have managed the design documents. It's their responsibility to identify the requirements and to construct them as you've indicated, and to indicate that management responsibility in the form of very specific language. And those, if you start to read the notations and start to understand, we try to remove the wiggle room. We try to state very specifically what the responsibilities are. And then if things go awry, what are the remedies and who's responsible for fixing the situation? So as you start looking at these notes, I'm not going to go through them, but you should be able to discern a very declarative property of this information. And so as we declare, you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that, it's not accusatory, it's really just declarative. So I think I need to make that statement known. Additionally, the process of building the sheet information is really about copy and paste and editing. And so we build the sheet, then Secor takes a Saturday or a Sunday and he reads every sentence and he red marks the heck out of them. And so on Monday, when my people come back in, they see all sorts of red marks on the drawings. And again, I won't go into that, but under other circumstances, I would have a show and tell for you. So with that being said, please do make it a process and a policy to look at what other people are doing with your documents and make sure that they're correct. And that's all I have for this lesson. We are going to be doing a cover sheet. And the assignment, as I mentioned earlier, is easier. It should be done pretty quick. So for those who need to look at the notes, they're provided here. We have provided here the drawing sheet, and I believe I could, no, that's the DWG sheet. That's the wrong one here. So let's go back to the PDF. Here it is. Okay, so this is the drawing that you're putting together, and it's largely provided for you. I don't think you have to do a lot. You have to put in a title. You have to put in the cover sheet. The index sheet. You need to put in the information. It's provided for you, by the way. You're not composing it. You're just providing it that I've given to you. So you're copying it in. The other information, same as the consultants or project participants. The only graphics you're really working on today is a vicinity map. And so in doing the vicinity map, it's probably good to understand that you may have to look around for some symbols, like there's an interstate highway symbol here, and fill that in. Unless you want to create that yourself, I think it'd be easier to go find that on the internet and put it in. But just generally replicate this information and make sure that the cover or the title block information is correct. I do have some notes that I want you to cut and paste in. And what I want to point out to you, and this is something that I observed in your sheet information for, I believe is the door information, you want to be a little bit more thoughtful about how you lay stuff out. So if you notice, there's a respectable little gap here between the margins. Crowding this stuff up right up to the edge is bad graphics, okay? No one likes to read that, and it doesn't read well, and it shows you weren't careful. So try to give yourself a little bit of space. This one's about as close as you possibly want to get. I kind of like this spacing a little better, but please be thoughtful about how you cut and paste the information in. It's not a haphazard process. Care is required. Remember, this is the first drawing that people see of yours, and they're going to draw an opinion. Either you were careful or you were not. And if you were not, you've set yourself up. They will know that you're not careful with anything that happens later on in the drawings. So first impressions are important. Just kind of reiterating that. So do use some caution here. Don't just slam this stuff down. Do good work so I can give you good scores. Okay. All right. So that's really what you're doing. I've provided you with the notes here. That's just a Word document. The sheet is provided here. There's the DWG. The information you can take pretty much right off the PDF. This is where you're going to insert it. And please do insert it here. Don't put it in the assignment column way up here because it throws everything off. Please just, insert it right here as part of your upload. So that's our assignment tonight. Very short. Hopefully the information that we talked about in the lecture will make sense as you're looking at this information.